Would you like to see the hypocrisy of Christian leadership on full display? Well, here we go.
Beat your ass and hide the Bible if God watching.
Beat your ass and hide the Bible if God watching.
I mean, what does that even mean, right? If God's watching. God is watching. And why don't you shut up about God, Kendrick Lamar? Why don't you shut up about Jesus Christ? Why don't you shut your mouth and not take the name of the Lord your God in vain? And everybody's defending this guy, saying, oh, he's a Christian and he loves the Lord and everything like that. Folks, this is garbage. He's not a Christian. He's not saved. He is taking God's name in vain, and it doesn't make the music better to sprinkle in several references to God in every song, several references to Jesus. No, it just makes it more blasphemous. And this guy, Kendrick Lamar, I also saw, had performed with a crown of thorns covered in blood, and he said, oh, I'm doing this to protest women losing right to have an abortion. So he was protesting and being pro-abortion, for murdering your baby, for killing a living human being by putting on a crown of thorns and being covered in blood or something. That is blasphemy. Let me tell you something. It's blasphemous for you to make light of God, Jesus, the crucifixion. Look, you should not be mentioning God unless you're talking to God or about God, and you better be talking about him respectfully, because hallowed is his name.
Did you expect it to turn into all this?
On that,
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
People are like, oh, why would you talk to somebody who hates God or whatever? How many times has my dad gone on TV shows with people who hate his guts and hate God and hate everything about him and his church just because they have a big platform and they'll let him talk on air? How many times has he done that? Has he been interviewed by people who hate him and his cause? So it's a pretty weak argument to go, oh, you're giving ammunition to the haters of God. No, my dad's giving ammunition to the haters of God because he's the one who's associating fundamentalist Baptist, being a fundamentalist Baptist with being a wife beater.
Right.
That's because he's the front man of that whole of the new IFB. And type in Steven Anderson on YouTube. The first 10 videos are all about him being a wife beater. So if someone goes, oh, this Steven Anderson guy, should look him up. Or you look up, probably even if you look up the new IFB in general now, all you're going to find is wife beating and child abuse.
Why?
My parents live in their own delusion. Basically, my dad just goes, oh, I haven't done anything wrong. He's not even slightly remorseful. Sorry. Because people are like, oh, why are you airing this out? It's not like my dad did this years ago. He apologized, and I'm here still just trying to drag him in public and harangue him for his mistakes from years ago. My dad is extremely unrepentant. And then my mom, when she's not outright denying it, because my mom will sometimes have a lucid moment where she realizes what she's done, and she just basically breaks down crying and feels sorry for herself and has a pity party about it. They're both hopeless as far as I'm concerned. My dad refuses to see that he's done wrong, and when my mom, on the off chance that she does, she just has a crying breakdown about it. So, yeah. I'm not interested in reaching either of them. They're both horrible people. I don't really care about them. I don't care about reaching them or helping them. They just need to quit hurting people.
I wanted people to realize that people were being hurt, not just me, my siblings as well. And so I wanted to get help for them. And I also wanted this to be a wake-up call for my parents, because my parents have been in denial about all of this and lying about it, not acknowledging it, saying, oh, it didn't happen, or it's exaggerated, or, they're misconstruing this. And I wanted it to be a wake-up call for them. Like, you will be held accountable for your actions. People will know. We're not going to keep lying for you. We're not going to keep pretending like everything's fine. We're going to tell people the truth. And you're going to have to explain yourself, or you're going to have to apologize and do better. And with my first interview, as I said at the end, I really want my siblings to have a better childhood than me. And I want them to have a better life than me. I want my parents to correct this. She was like, oh no, the tape is just there so that, I can spy on the kids without them knowing. That's a blatant lie. And my mom knows it. Like, if my mom's watching this, she knows that the reason why she put the tape on things with cameras, as she personally told me, and I believe she told my siblings the same thing, was that she wanted to get my dad on camera beating her up. And she even told us, because we would always, complain about the cameras and talk about them, being like, this is creepy, why are you watching us all the time? Why do you have a camera in my bedroom? And we would complain about them, and she said, anyone who complains about those cameras one more time is going to get a serious spanking, because she said, I don't want Dad to remember that I have cameras, because she said, I don't want him to be thinking about it or remembering it. She said, I want him to forget that we have cameras. Because she said, otherwise he's going to think about that and not want to beat me up if he knows that there's a camera in the room, and he's going to take me to a different room. So she said, I wanted to forget which rooms I have cameras in. I don't want him to be thinking about the cameras. So she forbade us from ever talking about the cameras for that reason.
So you heard it from his children, two of his older children. Sean Anderson is one of those right-wing pastors who is a proponent of Christian nationalism. What is sad about it is that there are so many people. No, at first, what is sad about it is that his children grew up in this abusive situation. His wife is still a proponent of this abusive situation as she is being abused. That's the worst part of it. The next level of the worst part of it is the fact that there are literally thousands of people who will defend this man and his behavior. He will go out and distract them with the Super Bowl antics of Kendrick Lamar or other songs of Kendrick Lamar, but don't shine the light on him. Don't put the camera on him and identify his life. It is such a hypocritical thing of Christians who will condemn everything else that someone else does, and they primarily focus on the Hollywood people, the singers and the entertainers, the sports athletes, and then they'll center in on their oldie but goldie, which is homosexuality. They'll center on those things while they expect you to excuse their bad behavior. They'll expect you to say that, well, I know I'm not perfect, and so since I'm not perfect and I beat my wife and I abuse my children, then that's something I'm working on and God will forgive me. But as far as those people over there, they're unrepentant. And who would know the level of their repentance more so than their own children? And the ones that he abused, they would know whether or not he is repentant, not the congregation. The congregation got rose-colored lenses on. The congregations are upholding these people and are saying that, well, I know that they are not perfect. And if the pastor can make that mistake and be forgiven, then certainly I can be forgiven for my mistakes because I'm not even as good as the pastor or as close to God as the pastor. And so the pastor has a deeper relationship with his God than I do. And if the pastor can make mistakes and the pastor can fall and then still find forgiveness and still love God, still love Jesus, still continue to come up in front of this church and pour himself out every week, then certainly I can find forgiveness in myself. So let me be forgiving of him. That's the psychosis that many Christians live in. And I know that the thing about it is most of us deconstructed from Christianity because most of us started reading the book and started understanding the book and started studying the book and realized that this book is filled with so many contradictions. And then this book is so non-historic. And then there are so many lies within this book. And this God is just cruel. And he perpetuates this cruelty. A man treats his wife and his children like property in the book and therefore treats his wife and his kids like property outside the book because that's what they're reading. That's what they're believing in. And when we see these things, these effects of this book, we then look at the people who represent this book and we just associate with it. We separate ourselves from it. There's been one thing that I have honestly said over and over again. If Christians truly wanted people to become Christians, then they would act as the best of whatever this book has to offer, and they would recognize the ills of this book and separate themselves from that part. They would take the book just as they did in the 4th century, 5th century, 6th century, and they would look at it and say, well, these things could not have been the authoritative, inspired word of God because look at the immorality that is going on in this Old Testament. Look at the immorality. Jesus called this woman a dog. So that could not have been something that my Jesus wrote. So we're going to rewrite this book. We're going to scratch that part out. But they don't have the decency to be able to do that, to be able to make this Christianity look like a moral book and look like something that has not been compromised by the cultures that wrote the book and rewrite it to something that is more befitting of the culture today. Because Christianity cannot continue to go on with such levels of immorality. And that immorality is displayed quite often in the people themselves, and especially in your leadership. But too many of you are too sheepish to stop the bad behavior of the representatives that you have within your religion. And that is the last part of why we deconstruct, not the first. We don't have church hurt. We're not dependent upon people. We study and we understand. So always remember, you have to free yourself to be yourself because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey